And for people who are unable to be here with us in person, we will have it linked on our website so that people can download the archive and listen to our beautiful voices.
And will we tell them where the website is?
We will. So the website is Center for Healthy Communities, UCR School of Medicine, Center for Healthy Communities. And if you go to the Center for Healthy Communities, there is a tab that says Projects. And there you'll see listed Voicing Collegiate Recovery. And that is the name of our project. So, my name is Cheney. I am a faculty member here in the UCR School of Medicine. I'm an anthropologist, and I do health services research. And I do a type of research that we will talk about today that is really driven by community and the voice of the community. I'll pass it over to the co-presenters to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Frances Fernandez, and I'm the community bit. I'm the chair of the UCR Community Advisory Board, which was set up to try and support collegiate recovery on the UCR campus.
Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Carvalho. I'm a doctoral student here at UCR, and I've also played a couple different roles. I'm a student in recovery, so I was a participant and now a partner in research.
Which is the way it's supposed to be.
So let me see if I have this correct. Okay. First, if any of you are into social media, if you use Twitter, Instagram, then please use hashtag #CommunitiesTalk. Part of the talk series that we have 3 different talks, is funded by SAMHSA. So this grant, the work that we're doing, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it is funded by Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. We have an engagement award, which we will get to what that means near the end of the talk. But please do use this hashtag, and we also have another hashtag, which is Instagram, Voicing Collegiate Recovery. Is that correct, Catherine? UCR.voicing.recovery. So the goals of this talk, 1, we want to provide information on what it means for community and academics to partner in research. So you can see from the presentation, I am representative of the academic leader, Frances is the community leader, and Danielle is the student leader, representing also, if we think about in terms of patient-centeredness, the voice of the patient. Another goal of this talk is to share an example of a community academic partnership, so essentially to share our story. And also we want to discuss opportunities to engage in partnered research. So here's our partnership. It includes a collaboration between UCR faculty, staff and students, the UCR Collegiate Recovery Advisory Board, Solid Ground Wellness and Recovery, Healthy Campus, and Student Recovery Group. So I'm going to go over those partnerships again, and I'm going to ask of the partners in the room if you could raise your hand or stand to indicate your collaboration and partnership in this team. So, UCR faculty, UCR staff, UCR Collegiate Recovery Advisory Board, Keith? Healthy Campus, and Student Recovery Group. Okay, great. So we have representation from diverse perspectives on our leadership team. This is an engagement award funded by the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, and it is PCORI in short terms. It is a federal agency, and PCORI has funded us to be able to engage different patients and stakeholders. That is their motto. They really want diversity in how we think about asking research questions, designing research studies, and understanding and interpreting the findings. So why study students in recovery? Why study recovering students? We know that students increasingly enter higher education sober, or once they are in higher education on campuses, they need to get sober. They increasingly find the need to get sober. We also know that this population of students faces a number of challenges because they live, they study, they work in sober, hostile environments. We also know that this population of students, they need safe places and support to live a substance-free life. And they also need access to recovery support to maintain sobriety and achieve success, not only academic success, but success in life. I'm going to hand it over to Francis. We are going to talk to you a bit about the history of our own collegiate recovery here at UC Riverside.
So it's been a lesson in hope, really. I came to UC Riverside in 2002, and let me tell you what it was like for a sober person there. I was 14 years sober, and I had worked for a while at UCLA, where there was great outreach on the part of human resources and support for people with addictive disorders or struggling with them. So once people got into trouble and felt, of course, always feel that they're the only ones, that we who had been sober for a while were there to help and support them. So I got to UCR, and of course, the sober community is a very close and supportive community. And so I looked around the UCR campus to find a similar kind of support, and there was none. And so I approached human resources, and I said, can we set up something like at UCLA? And when they'd finished choking on their coffee, they got off the phone as quickly as possible because we didn't want to be involved in anything like that. So there were no programs to support faculty and staff at all. And there also was nothing for students. Again, unlike UCLA, there were 6 AA meetings alone a week on the UCLA campus, and here there was nothing. And so eventually I hooked up with a woman who was in university housing, residential life. And those of you who know university campuses know that that is just a hotbed of use and abuse and general craziness. And she was concerned about what she was seeing among students living there, and the fact that things in terms of addictive substances were getting worse and worse and worse. So we got together and we created a group of people on campus who ran departments that might meet with students who had those issues, and we really didn't get very far, quite frankly. We had some very nice meetings, but we didn't accomplish an awful lot. And then in 2012, no, it was before that, in 2010, two things happened. A group of students approached us and said they were concerned about addictive disorders or substance use in themselves, in family members, and in fellow students. And they wanted to create a student group. And at about the same time, there's a saying among people who work with students, if they're being a problem, wait for 3 years, they'll go away. Well, actually, it's 4 years now. So we wanted to create a sense of continuity and support. And so we formed a community advisory board to support students, to support their activities, to support their sobriety, and to support, eventually to support research into the issue, and which is how we found Anne. Initially, this was a very exciting time. The students just accomplished so much in a couple of years. It was just a really exciting and hopeful time. They hosted weekly sobriety meetings. They held seminars on wellness. They ran sober programs. They talked housing into giving them a facility that was a safe place for people in recovery to hang out. And a part-time staff member who was there to refer people for help if they needed help, or just to find them a buddy if they needed a buddy. Those of you who are familiar with addictive disorders, which most of you are, know that it's a very isolating disease, very isolating. And then suddenly in 2016, that support was shut down. Housing withdrew. Student affairs did not want to hear about it. So we lost institutional support. We lost a space for the students. Anne and I had meetings with all kinds of people trying to get something together again without any luck. And but I like to think we kind of inspired Anne to get involved with this community. I may be wrong, but that's what I think. And so she started to work in this area, and she kicked off with, just realizing I forgot to tell you something. And so she kicked off the first research project involving students on this campus. What I forgot to tell you is that that student group, which is called, by the way, the Healing Highlanders, they did a number of amazing things, but one of the things they did was they began an annual Collegiate Recovery Conference. It was the first thing like that in California. It focused mainly on the UCs, but invited people from other institutions of higher education, especially the Cal States, but several of the private schools showed up. They had the first and the second of those conferences. SAMHSA, the White House Office of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, SAMHSA sent one of their directors. There were people from the CDC. There were people from collegiate recovery programs across the country. It was hugely successful. And there still is that annual conference to gather people, especially from the UCs, together every year and talk about what we're doing and what we need and what works and how we can best support students. And it's really quite special. And the student group won the very first UC President's Achievement Award. So that was a big deal because it was a new group. You know, you have student groups who've been around for 20, 30 years doing very good work, but they were selected, which I think said that the University of California statewide thought this was an important issue. So, okay, I think that's me. And then we're back to Anne.
Okay, so I just want to emphasize something that Frances said, that what unfortunately happened is the Collegiate Recovery Group that had been started and that had so much momentum, they unfortunately lost institutional support. And so what that meant is students very much felt as if they were without a space, without a voice. So Frances, as she mentioned earlier, approached me almost immediately after I arrived at UC Riverside, which was in 2015, and I did not have expertise in students in recovery. I had expertise in substance use and mental health services research. I am an anthropologist, and when she approached me, I thought, well, I don't really do that kind of research, you know, being a faculty member. And then I said, but wait, I am a researcher who listens to what the community needs. And if this is what they need, then I can figure out how to do that. So we decided that we would partner in research. We are engaged in a process that's called community-based participatory research. It is a type of research. There are various kinds of research, but this research is really driven by collaboration, equity, and really listening to the needs and the voice of the community. It's not a top-down approach where I, as a researcher, think, oh, I have a great idea. Why don't I go out and study it? It is about engaging in shared decision-making, creating knowledge together, so co-creation of knowledge, and sharing of resources. It is also about co-developing research questions, the design, and the methods, as well as collaborating to carry out the data collection, the analysis, and the interpretation. In addition, we co-write publications, presentations, and reports. So for instance, we are all on the leadership team of this grant that we currently have, and we are collaborating here together today. We've spent hours going over this presentation and the message that we want to convey to you all. This is an image of community-based participatory research, and it has two sides to it. One is the community, one is the academic. So if we take a look, when we think about the development, the implementation, the dissemination of a research project, on one end, or one side, we have the community. So when we think about development, about the kinds of questions, the study design, where we would get our funding, community and academics may approach this differently. So for instance, community may think, do the research questions, does the design meet the needs of the community? Does it have relevance to the community? Whereas on a researcher side, an academic perspective, we may think, is there scientific value? Do government agencies or foundations want to fund something like this? Can we get funding to actualize this project? Then when we think about the implementation of an actual project, thinking about recruiting participants, data collection, analyzing data, community may consider, okay, are the instruments, are the questions we asking accessible? Do people understand the questions? Are they meaningful questions? And then also, are we recruiting in a way that makes sense? Is it effective? Is it safe? From an academic standpoint, we may consider, okay, are we engaging in a scientifically appropriate recruitment method? Are we using snowball sampling? Are we using some other version of chain sampling, for instance? Are we randomly selecting? Are we purposively selecting? There are different questions that we bring to the table. And our job throughout is really thinking about how can we ensure rigor. When we think about dissemination, so the idea of drawing conclusions, maybe we're designing interventions, we need to translate the research findings. The community might think about where are we going to publicize these findings? How are they going to be accessible? How is it going to be accessible in such a way that it can help community members? And from an academic standpoint, we might be thinking, what is the scientific merit? How is this going to contribute to ongoing discussions in the literature, to theory development? Where are we going to publish this in academic circles so that this knowledge, so that it can continue to contribute to the generation of knowledge? So different ideas and agendas. But the ultimate goal is that we listen to each other and we recognize that we have diverse ways of thinking about engaging around a particular topic. Okay, so today we are going to talk to you about our initial project, and you can see around the room that there are images up. This is from our Photo Voice project. This is the first example of our partnered research project. And oh shoot, it's not playing. Unfortunately, we have a little video, but I don't think we're going to be able to play it. But if you go to our website, you'll be able to play it.
Maybe there's a button to push play on there. All right, so Anne was saying community-based participatory action research. So Photo Voice is a method of participatory action research. And this method uses photography to capture what participants, as in our case, for students in recovery, what they describe as their experiences, what they describe as their needs and their perspectives, versus like typical survey, and we're gonna give you a questionnaire, things like that. So it's just a completely different kind of mode of collecting data. And so through these images, students and participants are able to convey a narrative and ensure that their message is conveyed in a dynamic way rather than, as I said, through numbers or ABCD. And Photo Voice is grounded in health promotion and theories of critical consciousness. So it allows populations to critically think about their community and have critical conversations about these issues. And ultimately, hopefully, this empowers participants to make a change, to have an influence, and influence practice. So our research had a couple of different aims. The project aimed to allow students the opportunity to articulate their experiences of collegiate recovery. We also aimed to have a stronger understanding of students' preferences of collegiate recovery models, whether that was sober housing, 12-step meetings, health education, different various things, identifying what their preferences were. And the third aim was, it was an opportunity for us to partner with key stakeholders across, the community and our campus, and touch base with campus leaders and have an initial development of collegiate recovery models on our campus. So these aims were accomplished through asking these two questions. Students were asked, what is your experience of being a student in recovery? And then the second question, what support do you need to stay in recovery? So like I said, I was kind of in a unique position where I was a participant in this research study. So these are a couple questions or a couple pictures that I submitted to respond to these questions. As an undergraduate student seeking recovery, I felt, isolated. I felt as if I was the only one seeking a path of recovery, especially when you attend a university and you find out that there are no supports in place. It's very isolating in the sense that you feel alone, as if this is something that I'm the only one experiencing. And you can look around and see some of the other pictures that students, that they took pictures to address some of these various questions. And then the second research question, what do you need to receive support as a student in recovery and stay in recovery? So for many students, they attend 12-step meetings, and maybe that is an option available on campus. Maybe they need 12-step meetings here on campus in the environment that they spend majority of their day. Other students took pictures of, I like that picture over there because that's Back to the Grind, and it's a community coffee shop. And later on, we'll kind of see how it came full circle. We ended up having an event there. So it could be different avenues of staying in recovery, whether it's nature, whether it's art, having study halls that, it's a safe environment, that there aren't going to be illicit substances in that environment. So everyone had different responses to these questions, and it was an awesome opportunity to convey your message with photographs. And then following, when students had the opportunity to sit down with a research assistant and talk about their pictures and tell the narrative behind the picture. And after students had this conversation, different themes were generated from everyone's responses. So these are the 4 themes that came out of all of the students' responses. The campus environment is a culture of using. The neglected addict, students' recovery experiences, kind of tying back to feeling neglected, isolated. A third theme, the recovery path, academics, art, sport, so different ways in which you seek a path of recovery. And then lastly, campus recovery support. So whatever that looked like to that student, whether or not there was campus support or maybe there wasn't. So from these 4 themes, a small focus group of student participants gathered together to ensure that these themes were accurate. We still had another voice in the interpretation of the findings. So it wasn't just the researchers interpreting the findings. They did that, but we also had the opportunity to ensure that it was accurate. Were our voices being interpreted accurately in the way that we saw it? And so the last part of the research process is dissemination. So we had a couple of events to bring in the community and share these findings and let the campus community know what students in recovery here are experiencing. So this event was held at the barn, which is under construction right now, and over 100 people attended, and it was campus stakeholders, and it was a great opportunity because we collaborated with a fraternity on campus. This fraternity, they have an ongoing campaign, what is it called? Never Again campaign. So they had a fraternity brother who actually died from substance overdose. Yeah, so very unfortunate event, and they are trying to impact change. And so it was a really good opportunity to come together and promote further change. And the second event was held in the community at this picture, Back to the Grind. So Back to the Grind is also a location where 12-step meetings occur. So it's a really, I think, an awesome location in that sense that this already is a location that supports people in recovery, and now they're bringing in academics, students, community. There was a journalist there. So it's just like another opportunity to disseminate this information to the broader community. And during both events, students narrated the pictures. So within each picture, most students had a couple sentences to narrate what their photo captures. And so at both events, students were able to provide a voice behind the pictures and describe these experiences for the attendees at the events. So why does this all matter? So a big thing that I always advocate is that your voice matters. And as a student in recovery, I think that was the biggest thing that came out of this project, is letting students know that their voice matters and you have the opportunity to make a difference. And so coming out of all of this research, so many things were produced, yeah. So we call it the ripple effect, and this is why. So there was a lot of local recognition. We ended up starting recovery meetings on campus, and yeah, it's amazing. And now we have 2 meetings a week. We created a listserv, so students that identified as in recovery, they were able to join a newsletter and receive information about scholarships, about job opportunities, all around recovery. There was a sobriety campaign with our health education center on campus. They advocated different events that you can engage in while sober. We also started an Instagram and Facebook just to build a stronger community and let students know that there is students in recovery on campus, and these are some of the things that we're all doing as a group. So those are some of the local things that happened here on UCR's campus, but then also we had national recognition. So Recovery Campus is actually a magazine produced by ARHE, which is the Association of Recovery in Higher Education. So they published a story of how students in recovery at UCR used photography to voice their experiences, their concerns, and their ideas for campus recovery support. And then a broader implication, there was federal recognition, which ends up leading into this larger research project. So there's so many ways in which that this initial photo voice project, which is participatory action research, this one method, it impacted so many different avenues and leading into further research.
Can I make a comment? Mm-hmm. I just want to tell you that this was a humbling experience for me, because when Anne first told me about this research project, I thought it's going to go down in flames. I could not envision that it would produce something useful, and not only has it produced something useful, it has created, as we say, huge ripple effect. It has pulled together all of the parts of our community on this campus that we had tried so long to engage.
I had suspected that, Frances, but was not 100% sure. So this is bringing us back to our patient-centered outcomes research project, which we colloquially, or not colloquially, but here refer to as Voicing Collegiate Recovery. We have leadership, as I indicated before. We have 6 different leaders. So we have 2 student leaders. Actually, we have 3 student leaders. We just invited a 3rd student to join our leadership team. We have Frances and Tanya and Sarah Pemberton, who is from Counseling and Psychological Services, Danielle and Fiona, and Catherine, who actually was the research assistant who did all of the interviews with students who were in recovery for our Photo Voice project. So I do want to say that we have representation from all of these diverse perspectives, and we are collaborating together. And they are making sure that I do not use academic jargon and language. So we received $250,000 from PCORI to be able to engage. We are not doing research. A small, teeny tiny part of our project is research, but primarily we are involved in engagement. What that means is that we are working through the UC system through different networks, Healthy Campus Network, one, which is essentially a public health campaign to create cultures of health across our UC system. And specifically here at UC Riverside, we have a substance use and addiction subcommittee that we have slowly weaseled in the idea of recovery that now has become a big part of what we're doing for that committee, well, part of that committee. We are also working through our UC Recovery Network. So there's a UC-wide recovery network that we're also collaborating or trying to disseminate information through this network as well. And we have, sorry, I'm on this slide. We also have, as part of our group, as part of the engagement that we're doing, in addition to these 3 different talks, we have a community engagement work group that I'll share a little bit more in a moment. But this is a network that connects all 10 University of California campuses. We have representation from each of the 10 campuses, and we have 10 students who are also involved in this work group across the UC. So there are a number of ways that you can participate in this engagement process. One is to continue to go to our talk. So this is our first talk. This is really about the kind of research that we're doing. Our goal was to make research a little bit less scary. Often we think of academics and their ivory towers. It's a stereotype coming up with ideas of research. But this is very, very different. I did not come up with this question. Francis and a group of students and staff and concerned community members, they saw that I did research and they thought that there was some value in that, and then they approached me and they didn't stop calling. Our next talk will be on, let's see, October 15th, and it will be ways of comparing interventions. So we know that there are a number of ways that we can help students in recovery. Some are better than others, and some might be a better fit than others for our student population. And that talk will largely talk about those kinds of things. How do you think about comparing different kinds of interventions and assessing their effectiveness? How well do they really work within certain populations? And then our last talk, which is November 4th, is ethics in research. It is really about trying to understand what do we need to think about when we engage a student population with a history of substance use. What are the things we need to consider? What questions can we ask? How do we approach questions? How do we think about engaging? In addition, you could consider joining our Recovery Community Listserv, which you can access through our webpage, which is, again, on the Center for Healthy Communities, UC Riverside, and Project Voicing Collegiate Recovery. And then we have our Community Engagement Work Group, which has been actively working on a webinar and podcast series. So again, this is a work group that is across the UC. We have representation from each of the 10 campuses. We do have members of the Community Engagement Work Group here today with us. They have come up collectively together with 4 major themes that we will have educational webinars around, and then podcasts, which is more oriented toward experiential learning. Talk about drugs, which we just had. You can find the archived webinar on our website. Cannabis, college considerations. In January, we'll have the Collegiate Recovery Integration, and then in February, student interventions that will actually be led by Danielle and one of our other community partners, Keith, who's also in the room. And after each webinar, we will have a podcast that will be accessible likely through a music cloud? SoundCloud. Which we had our advisory board. We have an advisory board that guides us in our research. We meet quarterly over these 2 years, and they informed us that we need to use the SoundCloud, which I just learned about. We will also be doing data collection. This will be student-led. So I will train students on how to collect data, specifically group interviews, forums, a particular kind of method. It's a deliberative method. And what we will be trying to understand is we have some general topics that we know are emerging that are important. They're emerging from our community engagement work group discussions. They're emerging from discussions that we're having on the leadership team and our advisory board. And we want to figure out if we were to invest time and energy and next steps into one of those topics, what would that topic be? We will hold these community forums here at UC Riverside, UCLA, Santa Barbara, and UC Merced. And again, these will be students who will be eliciting the information. It will be from diverse stakeholders. So not just students will attend these community forums, but it will look like a room like this. And then we will hold a symposium in October of 2020. And we believe that the date is October 24th, 25th, 26th. So more to come. And then you might want to consider collaborating. So there are two potential opportunities where you could collaborate with us or with others on campus or in the community. UCR Healthy Campus has a grant opportunity that will be coming out either this fall or winter, and that will be $1,000 to $2,000 for collaborative projects that will be focused on culture change. We very much see our work as changing the narrative. It is about social change and structural level change. We have really shifted the conversations on substance use. We have shifted the conversations about students in recovery on our campus. All through research. And we have a new center, UCR Center for Health Disparities Research. This is a National Institutes of Health funded center, and we just put out a call. I'm part of the leadership team for this center. We just put out a call for Interdisciplinary Collaborative Research Awards. So there are opportunities for faculty, staff, students, community members to come together to think about if we were to propose research, what would that be? There are monies for work groups. There are also monies for junior faculty or early stage investigators in particular to get pilot funds. So why I emphasize this is you can go to a researcher and say, I have this idea. And maybe if they value community-based participatory research, you'll sit down and have a conversation about how you could collaborate. So, just to reiterate, the goals of the talk were to provide you information on community-based participatory research, the kind of research that we are doing together. To share our story of how we went from students losing their voice, losing their space, losing their voice, active advisory board coming together and saying, we need research on this, deciding we're going to use a method that's going to change the social, change the conversation and the structure on our campus. And then we also discussed how to engage in our current work and any potential partnered or future partnered research. So we have a few questions for you all. The first question is, what populations do you work with? What are some questions that have come up in your own work? And how can you use this kind of research to understand that question? So we will turn it over to you all. And you have to use the mic because we're recording. So questions or responses to any of these questions.
My name is Dick Jeske, and I'm a part of the Community Advisory Board. And I got sober in another sober, hostile environment called the United States Navy. And the things that came up was that stigma. Stigma was huge, and it still can be. And the thing was that there was a small part of the headquarters in Washington that got 100 of us together in 1973 from all over the Navy that had said, yes, I'm sober and I want to help other people. And it was in Washington, D.C., and they deemed the conference an immediate success because all 100 of us got there sober. And the thing basically is that when a face can be put on that people were not doing this with their will, they were doing it against their will, and that they are in an opportunity trying to work with each other to care about somebody else, not just themselves. It took off. Within 5 years, there was over 4,000 beds in the United States Navy system, the hospital system and recovery system assisting people. And the thing is that had a ripple effect. I was pleased and privileged after I retired from the Navy to coordinate a women's prison program at CIW for 8 years. And using the same principles that we used, and a lot of people have used in 12-step programs and the like. And the thing about it was important was this, was that the idea of this working, us as staff, the other staff that was there, they would look at us and go, yeah, you're just inmate lovers. And they wouldn't listen to a word we said. What they listened to was people that got sober in the program, inmates, and came back sober and were able to walk up to these people and shake their hand and say, thank you. That is what changed the environment. And this program absolutely has the same opportunity and already is happening to do the same type of ripple effect. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question, comments? I'm going to give you this mic.
So introduce myself? Or, yeah. My name is Gilbert Marquez, and I recently moved to Riverside in June. I graduated from UCLA. And so I'm a non-traditional student. I've worked with system-impacted and formerly incarcerated populations. I'm formerly incarcerated myself. And so the question I have about the research is, does the scope of the research kind of address the population of like non-traditional students or students from community colleges? Because when I started my active addiction, I was 19, I was at community college, and it took me a long time to navigate a community college until I could get into recovery, and then I started to progress in my academic career to this point. So that's kind of one of the questions I have. I have more questions. They'll come up, I guess.
Okay, so I'm going to pass this over to Danielle, but thank you for sharing. And yes, in our Photo Voice project, we had a number of non-traditional students. So our age range was, I think, from 20 to 40 or 38? 18 to 40. Mm-hmm. And we had transfer students. Maybe you can talk about the meeting.
Yeah, just drawing back also to the Photo Voice, I feel like if that was something that students needed, we would have been able to get that information. And I will say, we are just starting our recovery meetings here at UCR, but at other UCs, I've had the opportunity to collaborate with them and find out. And, every campus is different. Everyone's needs are different. And so it is nice to be able to tailor those meetings to, non-traditional students, maybe LGBTQ 12-step meetings. And I think that's what's so awesome about having an avenue of voicing what you need is that not everyone needs the same thing, right? And so it's nice to have that space that you feel connected. Like, for instance, when I first started going to AA meetings in the community, I felt not connected. I was like, I am a student. I'm like half the age of the people in the room. Like, it was not what I needed. What I needed was student recovery meetings. I wanted to connect with students, other people that were struggling with the same thing. So that's what I love so much about this research. It's not what the academics thinks that the students need. It's the students voicing what they need. And so if that's what our community needs, we will make it happen. Yeah.
I just also want to point out that Danielle has been instrumental in leading our student recovery meetings, as has Fiona, who is part of our leadership team.
Hi, my name is Jeanette Davidson, and I took the opportunity through the Riverside University Health System of Behavioral Health to participate in the peer employment training program to become a peer support specialist. And it's basically doing what you guys are doing, but for the community. And peer support is an evidence-based practice bringing people together who have similar lived experiences to share hope and recovery. A person embarking on a journey to wellness and recovery receives support from a person who has through similar challenges. This person is a peer support specialist. So I should have brought more, but I didn't exactly know. But this is what this is about. People are more inclined to speak with people or approach people who have similar lived experiences. And that has also gotten me into the mental health first aid administration, which I work with youth, veterans, and adults to address any of those types of things. So I'm like a middleman. I address a situation and get them to proper places. So this is all combined, and I think that this in itself is bringing this type of thing to people of their peer in the college setting.
Thank you very much. So absolutely. This is what this research has done, has created peer-based opportunities. Okay.
So based on my own experience, I'm a transfer student, and I didn't personally go through any major addictions. My older brother went through a 4-year-long stimulant addiction. And through that, I did a lot of research because I study neuroscience. I did a lot of research on motivation and the brain pathways and everything involved, and really how to get him clean. The state systems that are in place, like when somebody gets caught with drugs on the street, they throw them in a class with other people that are selling drugs. So if someone were trying to get clean, it wouldn't really work. And something that I realized is my family has a history of ADHD, and I was diagnosed with bipolar as an adult, and so is my brother who had the addiction. So there's a very heavy link between mental health and addiction. And that's often ignored. When I was taking OChem and I was trying to transfer, and I would have to leave class because I was getting calls about my brother's overdose. And I tried to speak to my teacher, and the response was, "You should drop." So there's a lot of, especially in CNAS and in the sciences, that like, well, you should drop. Obviously, you don't have time for it, or obviously, like, this isn't for you. And there's a lot of stigma around it. Like, I feel like as soon as you start to open up, like, I have mental health issues from this that happened, and as soon as you say, well, my brother was an addict, people just kind of like write you off, and they're just like, well, that's his problem, and kind of group you into this demographic. And there's so much heavy stigma and a huge lack of understanding of mental health.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think that each of these, or several of the comments, really point to the idea that what students have expressed to us and what we're consistently learning is the need for support. And it might not be necessarily treatment services. It really might be the connection that a community and a sense of belonging can offer. And I think that's why our peer-based recovery has been just really amazing, that students have come together with very little institutional support, and they have made these meetings happen. Nope, you're done? Okay.
My team would be surprised if I didn't say anything, so I had to. My name is Desmond Young. I'm with Riverside Recovery Resources. It is a nonprofit that's been around here in the community for over 30 years. The main thing that I'm here for was, well, one, I'm so grateful for Francis and Lisa to invite us. But I'm really here with an open mind, since I have this nonprofit, to say, what can we do? Not only are we involved with substance use counseling from adolescents to obviously adults, but I'm also involved with Regional Homeless Alliance, and I just see so many things that aren't working. And on a personal note, since we've shared some things, I was a pre-med student. It was funny walking into this building. I was a pre-med student, UT Austin. I met alcohol my senior year, and I didn't finish school. And then I got into a corporate, mindset, and it just so happens that my drinking, I was still able to just progress in business for 27-year career. Not until after that did things start falling off the rails, and so now I'm in this place for the last 15 years of sobriety, but I'm in this place to just say, how can we make this work? I'm a pragmatist, right? And I'm seeing so many things within the county, the states, that just don't work. So now that I have an opportunity to bring business, private industry, and what you guys are doing, this research is, you guys already said it, research is necessary to validate a lot of things. So I'm looking for that direction. What can we do to help really make a difference and have some measurable results? So.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay.
Hi, my name's Dawn Hinge. I'm also in recovery, and I found my way through a 12-step program, but mostly for it being made available to me by people who cared, who helped eradicate that stigma. They plucked me out. They picked me out, really, as an alcoholic mom, neighbor, a student. I was invited by my first college professor, who became my friend. We just clicked, and she became my friend, and she noticed some things in me that she had come to recognize in herself and invited me into 12-step recovery. And that's my story. But I also had a really quality private education coming up all the way through elementary, junior high, and high school. And when people say, "Oh, really? Wow, you went to private school like that? Did you always?" Oh, then you must have been separated from drugs and alcohol and things like this. Probably more so than an average public environment, but that wasn't what really provided us a lot of safety for those who wanted it. We're never going to eradicate alcohol use and drug use in the school systems, whether it's colleges or our high school campuses, et cetera. But what we had that really made a difference, that I really noticed as the difference, was if you wanted drugs, if you wanted alcohol, if you could find it, just like any other school. But if you wanted to go to the classrooms where we were celebrating positive things, it was a faith-based education, but if you wanted to go where people were making good choices, if you wanted to go where that was supported and celebrated, there was no stigma in our environment. Not as much surrounding those type of choices. So I think if we can foster through just open conversation, like Francis was saying, to change the conversation to where we have confident conversations about providing positive places for students who want to choose clean, sober environments, who want to get help with what they're struggling with, and they know they're gonna find warm, open support and dialogue, that they will at least, I feel, since we know the drugs and the alcohol are going to be there, we know the substance-based problems are going to be there, that we need to make sure that the options for recovery and the solutions and the healthy conversations and the warm environments are open to anyone looking for them. And I'm actually shocked to know that there was a real deficiency in this area. So I have seen the side where when you know it's there, then the choice is on you. But it's a shame if it's not there and everybody doesn't know about it.
Thank you. Other comments, questions, concerns? Yes.
My name is Keith Gaucher, and I'm part of the Community Engagement Workgroup, and I've been involved with Collegiate recovery from way back when. And first thing I have to say is, Francis, I really appreciate what you've done. It's been, 8, 9 years that, and this is what happened. It used to be just a room. Yeah, Francis and everyone, when we started out, it was just 3 of us in a room. So this is what has happened. So I'm happy to be a part of that. As far as what I've seen happen, and someone's already kind of touched on it, most of the dialogue and the narrative around mental illness and around addiction is just, it's shaming. So as a clinician, I've had to learn to talk about, they don't even use alcoholic and addict anymore. It's called substance use disorder. And if it's a disorder, if I'm trying to talk to someone, they're more likely to listen if I talk to them about having a disorder rather than being an alcoholic or an addict. Even the mental health component, you know, saying that you have a mental illness is not as acceptable as saying maybe there's some mental health issues. So really the dialogue, that's going to be my challenge, and our challenge is how we educate. So as a certified counselor, my responsibility is to educate. I've been dealing with different populations for over 25 years. And the biggest challenge that I see when I'm talking to someone that it's obvious there is an issue is what kind of language am I using? What's the narrative? And, you know, taking away the shame that goes along with it, because as soon as you say alcoholic or addict, it's a shame-based thing, and we're trying to get away from that. So I'm really happy to be a part of, to see this many people in the room and to see some real progress being made, because I can assure you it's been a long time coming, and we are more focused and we are more purposeful than I've ever seen. So I'm very proud of everybody, so thank you.
So I guess I just want to end with, we're likely all in this room because we have connection in some way to recovery, to people with histories or current uses of substance use. For myself, I really appreciated all of the stories that you all shared, and I do want to share that I am in this work. I became an anthropologist, right? I went to grad school because I wanted to be an anthropologist, but over time I actually went from being an anthropologist to a health services researcher in substance use and mental health. And that is largely because my brother suffered from co-occurring disorders of schizophrenia and also a substance use disorder. And unfortunately, he passed away. And that's been a critical role, his illness and his co-occurring disorders, in the work that I do. And I'm very passionate about what I do because it hits so close to home. And I imagine that's also a similar story in terms of the connection to this topic. And then I want to end with Francis, but one thing that I want to say, this image over here that says education is an important part of recovery, this is one of a very purposeful and meaningful factor in what we heard with our students who are in recovery, that being a student is so critical to their identity, to recognizing that they had the ability to overcome such extreme adversity and that they are moving forward and that they are being successful. And our job as a community is to support them.
I just wanted to make a comment, going off what Keith said, that about how we discuss people with substance use disorders. Our first, we don't have the slide up anymore, but the very first webinar that we did, which this week, which will be, if it isn't already on our website, was specifically to talk about what happens with the brain when you introduce addictive substances or activities. You know, there's a broad spectrum. And it really, for those of us who feel we need, because people will make fun of you, say, oh, alcoholism is a brain disorder. It's and people make fun of it, but it is a disorder. And that first webinar really explained it well with good diagrams showing exactly what happens in the brain and why some people's brains get snagged by the ism and others don't. So I recommend that.
Okay, we are going to conclude our talk. I do want to say, if you participate in each of the 3 talks, then we will provide you with a certificate. We know that could be helpful for students as well as other staff or community partners or community members. So make sure that we get your name, and please do join us for our next talks. Our website is up here. And we also have our Instagram up here as well as Facebook. And thank you so much for coming out on a Friday. And Catherine has a survey that she wants to give out. Okay, and make sure to give me your survey.